Our scripture today is from 1 Samuel, chapter 1, verses 4 through 20. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to his wife, Peninnah, we went back and forth, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah, he gave a double portion, because he loved her. And though the Lord had closed her womb, her rival used to provoke her severely, to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year after year. As often as they went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. And therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah said to her, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" After they had eaten and drunk at Shiloh, Hannah rose and presented herself before the Lord. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly, and she made this vow. "O Lord of hosts, if only you will look on the misery of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a male child, then I will set him before you as a Nazarite until the day of his death. He shall drink neither wine nor intoxicants, and no razor shall touch his head." As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Now Hannah was praying silently, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard, and therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Put away your wine." But Hannah answered, "No, my Lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation all this time." And then Eli answered, "Go in peace. The God of Israel grant the petition you have made to him." And she said, "Let your servant find favor in your sight." And then the woman went to her quarters, ate and drank with her husband, and her countenance was sad no longer. They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord. And then they went back to the house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time Hannah conceived and bore a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I have asked him of the Lord."
Our gospel reading this morning comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 13, verses 1 through 8. As he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." May we hear and understand what our scriptures are teaching us today. I gotta tell you, when I looked at all the lectionary selections for this particular Sunday, Thanksgiving Sunday, right? I thought, well, it's an interesting Sunday. We have Thanksgiving in 4 days. We have Christ the King falling afterwards a bit this year. And Samuel's a wonderful story about Hannah. And Mark is exciting, to say the least. with earthquakes and famines and wars and buildings falling down and being destroyed. So, Hannah, talk a little bit about her first. I have known so many women who have tried so hard to have a family and were challenged, to say the least. For whatever reason, they would try year after year and month after month to conceive a child, and they would fail. And it was their heart's desire to have children. And then I've seen people who really didn't want to have children suddenly be with child. And I shake my head and I scratch my hair and I think, how does this make sense? And I look at it and I see oftentimes some are adopted and given a wonderful family, and the parents who wanted a child are blessed with this child. I have a friend who, another pastor, and they recently adopted a child who's now 2, I think, who's now 2. And they're so blessed and happy that they were able to adopt the boy, the little infant boy, because otherwise they couldn't have had a child. And here's Hannah, she gets teased by one of the other wives. That made me stop to think, by the way. One of the other wives, about biblical marriage. Anyway, one of the other wives gets teased about, well, you're not as good as us because you're barren. So she's sad and she's upset. But yet she continues in her faith to pray and to trust in God. And she goes to the temple and she goes to the temple and she prays. She even puts up with being called drunk for sitting there praying silently. Nowadays, if we see somebody from a distance who we can't hear, then we think they're just on their cell phone or something like that. But she's sitting there, just her mouth opening and closing, and Eli thinks she's there. She says, "No, I'm just so distraught that I continue to pray." And Eli gives her the word of the Lord that her wish will be granted, and she bears Samuel, who becomes a mighty, mighty prophet. We kind of wonder now and then about how it is that all this time had to go by before she finally would be blessed and her prayers would be answered. And I'm amazed that after she had this son, she kept her word. Remember, she said she was going to give him over to God. That meant he was going to be trained to be a priest. And he's the one who later on we hear this story about him being woken up in the middle of the night, But she took him, as she promised, to Shiloh, and she left him there to serve in the temple as an apprentice to Eli. She left him there for the Lord, after all this desiring of having this son. And he grew up serving the temple. It's kind of an amazing story, and Hannah is full of her thankfulness and her faith that her child, her son, is now going to be serving the Lord. All these years of barrenness, all these years of nothing, and then finally her wish is granted through her fervent prayer, and the precious son goes to the temple. But yet her faith makes her thankful for that. Another person who got something he went after was Pope Francis. He was elected Pope, right? When he was elected Pope, he handed back some of that power. He rode in a Ford Focus instead of the papal limousine. He moved into a guest house apartment instead of the apostolic palace. And he wore a simple cassock instead of all the regal finery. Henry Lewin, a very important theologian and faculty member, left his faculty position at Harvard to live in a community in Canada where his job was to care for a single severely handicapped young man named Adam. So we see these people who seem important or seem mightily blessed, finally. Hannah with her son, Pope Francis, Henry. And yet, their calling, their most gracious desire is that God be served. But the big lesson that I saw today had to do with Mark. It's great to be grateful for everything that we get that we think we wanted or we didn't want, and yet we make something out of it. But, boy, Mark, if you've ever seen any of those tumbled over massive stones from Herod's temple in Jerusalem, you might have an idea of the immensity of this big, giant temple. Huge, huge. We would be like one of the building blocks. You know, this would be like one of the building blocks. So I can imagine the disciples just gawking and saying, what large stones and buildings? What do you mean you can do that? And I was reminded of an incident in 1940. It was November 14th, 1940. It was a full moon. And the Luftwaffe, I think that's how you say that, Luftwaffe, had waited for this date for a blitz. And it was the blitzing of Coventry. And Coventry had this beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous cathedral. The only picture I could find was terrible resolution, really tiny, that would never have shown on the screen, so I'm not showing it to you. But Coventry Cathedral, the Luftwaffe waited, and then 515 planes flew in formation, dropping incendiary bombs to surround the whole city of Coventry in flames. And they bombed the water mains so that the fire brigade were powerless. Their hoses wouldn't work. And with that extra light of the fire, they flew back and forth, and they basically destroyed the entire medieval city of Coventry. After being underground for 13 hours, the citizens came out to see this eerie landscape, almost science fiction desolation. We've seen some of those movies about, after the Holocaust. 4,000 homes destroyed, 3/4 of the city's factories. All the landmarks, the familiar buildings were reduced to rubble. And the common cry wasn't that their homes were no more, it was the loss of the cathedral. Churchill worried that that would lead to a loss of morale, and the people of Coventry did seem to be in the midst of a collective breakdown. But as time went on, here's what they said. This is a quote from somebody, but I don't know the exact person. My source didn't have that, but it says, "This has made us more determined now. We're going to get those buggers back for what they did." The sheer size of that cathedral was some indication of the wealth of Coventry. And that's in the Middle Ages, mind you. But it was nothing compared to the Jerusalem temple. So we look at all of this, and all of this destruction. And you see that picture on the upper left about, a destroyed temple. You can kind of take that for any destroyed buildings. And we can weep. The fire in paradise. The fire, the Woolsey fire out here. Little bitty Sierra fire out here that thankfully got under control quickly. Earthquakes all over the place. Floods. Famine. I looked at it and I thought, boy, if this were 1970 or 71, when I was junior high school, I'd hear all the preaching of the end times are here, the end of the world. And then I looked at it more carefully and it said, it is the beginning of the birth pangs. Birth is probably one of the only times that pain is regarded as good. Women will relate to that a little more than the men here. But I saw a video I laughed out loud. It was a man and he was lying on a sofa or something, and he had some kind of, like a TENS unit or something. It was hooked up to his abdomen. And whatever it was supposed to simulate the pain of labor. He couldn't take it. He was like, he couldn't take it. And yet, what comes out of that pain of labor? Something wonderful. Something wonderful. Our children come out of that. We ourselves came out of that in one way or another. On our end, all of this pain is hard, and yet it is a necessary prelude to new life. As I was talking about challenges that I'm grateful for, because I learn and I grow, I become stronger in my faith, I learn to use the tools that God will give me, I learn to depend upon God to help me find the ways to deal with things and to handle with things. I'm sure that on God's side, the pangs of bearing with the constant insanity of human history strikes agony into God's heart. There's a story that I wanted to share with you about this. I don't have an easy answer. Why were there terrible fires? What are we going to get out of that? I did see some wonderful stories of humans reaching out to each other, in particular the volleyball team. There was a volleyball team from Paradise that was supposed to play a game with another team. And they were determined to go, even though they had no equipment, no uniforms, basically no way to get there. They found some rides and they got there for it. The other team made them uniforms, got them equipment, fed them, housed them. It was one of the most touching stories I'd ever read. The game was not, I don't even know who won. It was not of consequence. What was of consequence was the ability of people, even who are supposed to be on opposing sides from their volleyball game, to reach out and help each other and love each other and put aside their differences and share really the mercy of God with one another. So I look at things like the Paradise Fire and I cannot be joyful. I just cannot be joyful about the fire. I can be joyful about the response of people helping one another and taking care of each other. Anyway, I have this story. It's about fraternal twins, and they're in their mother's womb. So if you can, kind of put yourself in there. Think about this. There's a little girl and a little boy. One day the girl said to her brother, "I believe there is life after birth." Her brother protested vehemently. No, this is all there is. This is a dark and cozy place, and we have nothing else to do but cling to the cord that feeds us. The little girl insisted, there must be something more than this dark place. There must be something else, a place with light where there's freedom to move. Still, she could not convince her brother. After some silence, she said hesitantly, "I have something else to say. And I'm afraid you won't believe that either, but I think there is a mother." Her brother became furious. "A mother? What are you talking about? I've never seen a mother, and neither have you. Who put that idea in your head? As I told you, this place is all we have. Why do you always want more? This is not such a bad place. After all, we have what we need. Let's be content." The sister was quite overwhelmed by her brother's response, and for a while didn't dare say anything more. But she couldn't let go of her thoughts. And since she only had her twin brother to speak to, she finally said, "Don't you feel these squeezes every once in a while? They're quite unpleasant and even painful." "Yes," he answered. "What's so special about that?" "Well," the sister said, "I think that these squeezes are there to get us ready for another place, much more beautiful than this, where we will see our mother face to face. Don't you think that's exciting?" The brother didn't answer. He was fed up with the foolish talk of his sister, and he felt that the best thing would be to simply ignore her and hope that she would leave him alone. How many of us get stuck? How many of us sit here and think, no, there can't be anything much better. I don't want to take any chances. No, there's nothing coming after this. We're just stuck where we are. We're just going to make the best of it. And why do you keep trying to make things better? And why do you keep trying to get out and do something more? And why do you keep... I'm sure we've all been there. I'm sure sometimes we've all been to the place where we say, I'm not going to try anymore. I'm too tired. I'm just going to stay here. This chair is comfortable. I'm not going to get up anymore. I'm here to tell you, we face really challenging times. We face many struggles and squeezes. And sometimes we wonder, how in the world can we be thankful in this climate of fear and trauma? How can we? We can when we look at one another, one person to one person, and we're thankful for that person. One little group to one little group. And we're thankful the team came to play volleyball with us. And we're going to do what we can do to help them get back on their feet and be able to play with us. I can look out here at Ron and Pam and be just traumatized that they're leaving. But I can be so thankful for all of the joy that they've brought to us here at Bethel. And I'm sure that we'll see you again. It just might be a while. Maybe we'll come up there. Green Valley? I think about things like, really? So much driving? I'm talking about myself when I teach at schools far away. And then I think about, well, I guess I should be grateful for the income. And then I think about, what good does it do to have this income and this benefit that's supposed to be health insurance if you're tearing up your health trying to get it? So, I go like that. So the other big thing I'm thankful for is that just barely, because sometimes I'm part-time and sometimes I'm full-time, but just barely I'm vested in CalPERS. So I'm done. So I'm a little scared, because that cuts my income in a little less than half. But I'm not going to be spending a minimum of 15 hours a week driving and another 12 or 15 hours a week lecturing in Carson. So, we'll see what happens. Other opportunities come all the time. Doors open. I came to Bethel just to visit and finally be in a Christian church that was a welcoming place, and look what happened. So I'm not worried. I suppose I should be thankful for getting a partial amount of money after I leave there. And very thankful for the time to spend here with us. And excited about what that could mean of having more time here. So there's bumps. There's bumps in the road, and some of the bumps right now are big. But think about it. Talk to people one-on-one. Welcome them into your sphere. Take them out for coffee. Give them a cup of tea. Listen to their concerns. Let them know that they are cared for and loved. Each and every person that we meet, no matter what their political side is, no matter what country they're from, no matter what their ability level is, no matter any of that, blind, sighted, deaf, not, tall, short, skinny, fat, abled, disabled, no matter what, each and every person that we see and that we meet and that we encounter is someone that God loves. So it's our job to be those hands, feet, eyes of God, and to express through our hands and our feet and our eyes and our voice and everything else that same love of God. I try with my friends with whom I disagree politically not to block them, not to unfriend them. I have unfriended a couple. But instead to try to simply get them to engage with me in respectful conversation, and to not be afraid to tell them that I'm one of those people that God loves too, and that I expect them to engage with me in a respectful manner. And maybe that's the key, to hold their position full of love, and to open up for some discourse. I know some people seem closed. I know. But that doesn't mean we should stop trying. It is challenges to rise up to, whether to rebuild in paradise, whether to reach out to one single person on the sidewalk. The challenges are small and huge, and I'm thankful, and I hope we all are, that we all have the opportunity to rely on the strength of God to enable us to meet those challenges. Amen.